As artists, sometimes we are called to use our creativity to make a difference, through music, through photography, or through film. And sometimes we're lucky enough to combine a multitude of our talents to create a project that will make an everlasting impact. My guest today, Rachel Myers, an award-winning filmmaker, had an idea, and that idea turned into something that reminds us of one of the greatest qualities that we can possess as a human: kindness. You're listening to We Need to Talk.
So you got something to say that is on your mind. We need to talk about it. You know, just one conversation can change your life. We need to talk about it. We need to talk.
Rachel Myers, thank you so much for being on We Need to Talk today.
Hello, it's such a delight to be here and to get to be part of your show. I'm really tremendously honored and so thrilled that our movie is going to be screening at Tribeca Film Festival and that we get the time to talk about what it's about and the background of the project.
Absolutely. And I love when people use their gifts to make a difference and showcase an important message. And I especially love it when they do that with art. And that's what you're doing with this film. You took on the task of directing a film that's being featured at Tribeca, like you mentioned, called Bourn Kind. And I was so moved by the trailer and this project. And I feel like we've seen over the course of the last few years a lot of social awareness campaigns happening because people have a lot to say and people are realizing, I need to use my voice, I need to use my medium, I need to make an impact. So how did this particular project come to be? How did you connect with Bourn Rich in order to create this beautiful piece of work called Bourn Kind?
So it started, the backstory, we will rewind. The backstory was early pandemic. I had done this drawing because my background is I'm a director for film, I'm a filmmaker, but I've also worked as a production designer for film and as an illustrator for many, many years. And so the way that immediately makes sense to me when I talk about things is to put it on paper visually and to see it. And I had a lot of reactions and interactions with people in the early pandemic, probably because of all the fear and the weight of the grief and trauma that everybody was going through, where just in navigating our lives about the city or walking down the street in the neighborhood, I felt the avoidance of people. I felt that beyond the masks that we were all forced to wear, there was this extra layer of aversion and distancing, because it's really easy to be able to say hello to somebody normally or to smile with a nonverbal gesture. And then all of a sudden you're walking your dog and you're wearing sunglasses and a mask and you're deprived of this really basic human interaction of recognition in how we see and respond and communicate with each other. And so I felt that, and I did this little sketch on paper with a bunch of different types of people, and the people had messages on their masks, and the messages said things like, "I see you, I'm hurting too, sending love, Black Lives Matter," all of the things that happened in the phases of the pandemic. First, we were isolated, then we had this major movement start to happen in this country because of all the activity and energy that everyone was feeling. And so all of those threads fed into that little illustration. And I had this sort of overwhelming response from people on my social media who said, "Oh my gosh, that is so how I feel when I walk out in the world." And so I thought, well, that's a movie. And I wrote a script. Originally, it was going to be a narrative with an actor. And by, the way that the cosmos work, people appear in your life at the right time. And through the Black Jewish Entertainment Alliance, Bourn and I connected. His name is Rich Ingram, as his real name, his artist name is Bourn Rich, and became friends. And I had written this character, and all of a sudden here was the man who took this sketch of this idea. A script is just like an outline, and it animated it into something real. And I talked to him about the project, and I said, would you play this part? And then in our collaboration and working together, it became beyond the part. I changed, the original script was called The Tiny Kindness Project, and I changed it to Bourn Kind because of him, because he was the missing ingredient that took the project from an outline to being fully fleshed. And I think that's why the work is reaching people and why it's emotional and vulnerable, because he is an artist in the world. He's really talented. He works in lots of different types of mediums, and he plays himself. And so it's a verite piece, and became a documentary because the sketch added the ingredient of a person, and then we went in the world and did the project for real. And for all of those people who are listening today, what the project became was, as I sort of had done in those illustrations, was just people with messages. So he created little square patches and wrote and, like, painted them with different things that people are, blessings, love, family, connection. And we set up a table in the park, and we set up a table on the street in Melrose in LA. And people came by, and they said, can I put a message on my mask? And we took pictures of those people. And then we had this amazing photo collection of all different kinds of people with messages that they had selected. And then he used those photos in his mural, which then became a real piece of art. In the script, it was he created a mural, and then it was, again, the missing ingredient. He had a relationship with the Fame Yard in LA, which is a super famous graffiti spot on Melrose, and got us a great wall space. And that mural was painted for real in the film, and then it became a real piece of living social justice art that was up for a whole calendar year on Melrose for people to go see and interact with. So that's really been this, like, amazing blessing of this project, is that, you work independently as an artist, generating ideas, and then when you put it out there, all of a sudden, I think, in the credits for the film, there's 80 people, because we had people just walking up in the park asking if they could take a picture, and inviting people, and being able to share the many phases of the project, first from the seeds and bringing on Bourn. And I have an amazing producer, Connie Jo Seacrest, and then adding the other ingredients of the people on the streets, our cast, our crew, and then a living piece of art in the community, has, like, been really profound and very special to see it sort of go to that, the peak of what that was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just the evolution of it from being an idea on paper for you to truly becoming reality has to just be so heartwarming for you personally to see that. And just, I mean, not just being a director, but something that's powerful, that is actually making social impact. I think that that's really huge.
Yeah, thanks. When you said that, I just got all the feels, all the feels, because there was this really awesome sort of like tick that was happening when we filmed among the crew, because people don't often get to work on projects that they feel like represent them or say how they're feeling. And I just had so many interactions with people on our crew, and I'm so grateful for all the people who participated in the project, and for our amazingly talented crew who, it's a small shoot. We were able to in some cases give them money for their time, but not what people really deserve as artists. And I really believe in being able to pay artists and share people's work. And so I'm so tremendously grateful for that part of it, and also for that spirit that those people then brought as, like, the other ingredient puzzle pieces into making and building something. Because when Connie organized this awesome online screening for everyone to be able to watch the film together from the crew, and then now we've been able to share with everyone the news of the selection into Tribeca, and seeing the faces who were all a part of this and who helped make that happen. I mean, there is no greater feeling. I can't express how much gratitude I have for people sharing their time and their voices, because it's really, to me, it's really what it's all about. And I'm honored that, like, a little idea I had, and then adding my collaborators in Bourn and my other EP, Tamika Lamison, and Connie, like, really took it from the page to something that breathes life in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were writing out your script, were you intentionally hoping to have a person of color be the lead, or was that just kismet when you met up with Bourn?
No, it was important to me to have a person of color, because I just feel in this moment, America is a real mix of people, and
Yeah.
I think we're having a moment of cultural reckoning about identity in this country, and reconciling different disparate parts of this country, um, that are of different shades, and what that
Hmm.
means, and what it means when you walk on the street and someone sees you and they say, oh, I'm going to make a judgment based
Yeah.
on what I see, based on my view, a lens of the world, to who you are, and I'm going to project that onto my how I interact with you, the opportunities that I give you, the experiences that you will have in your life. And I'm really, an advocate of in my own work and my own identity, like making sure that it is, inclusive of all people, but also like celebrating voices of people who should be front and center, in my opinion,
Yeah.
in terms of getting playtime, in sharing their work. And Bourn is a Black and Jewish man. That is part of my own identity as a Jewish woman, and also, ethnically, there's some other ambiguous things in my own identity, and that's part of my experience and how I'm treated. And so I feel like it's really important to share that.
Yeah, I really love that choice personally, and I love that Bourne is a Black Jewish male, because I think, as and you kind of touched on this a little bit, there is this automatic reaction to Black males just when you see them walking down the street, just regular interactions, passing you on the street, getting in the elevator with you, getting in line with you, and you see a little bit of that in the trailer, kind of people's reaction to him, and I loved it, and that's what struck me, because the assumption there is so common for specifically Black males. And then and you show throughout the trailer just kind of how kindness is infectious. Once somebody receives it, they're like, oh, and it also makes them kind of reflect about themselves. So I know I've only seen the trailer, and I'm excited when I do get to actually see the full film, but do we get to see more of that throughout the film, just that change in people when they realize?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly that. And that comes from my own family. I mean, my mother was a public school teacher and principal growing up, and in some of the roughest parts. Originally, she started her career teaching in juvenile hall in downtown LA, and in Portland, when I lived there, she taught to people who were from very, underrepresented communities, and also kids who did not have a lot of money, access, opportunities.
Hmm.
And so that's a big part of my experience growing up, and seeing her give all the time to try and help bring people up, and bring up those schools, and bring up those readers, and like give opportunities. I mean, our toys were constant and books were disappearing my whole childhood, because we would spend every weekend in my mom's public school helping
Yeah.
make bulletin boards, and she would take to her kids who didn't have. And she's a real kind person. And when Trump was elected, and it sort of unleashed this fervor of division that was already there, but it gave
Yeah.
voice to that kind of aggression and animosity that we would see more publicly. I noticed when we started going out in the world, normally she would always make small talk with people, but there was this extra level of, how are you today? Like, you
Hmm.
look beautiful. Are you having a nice day? Like, really seeing people and engaging and connecting. And I said, Mom, what is going on? And she said, we have to counter this with kindness. Just, and that like really is
Hmm.
the MO of how I was raised and how I try to be in the world. And then when I met Todd and I told him that backstory, he told me a story about how his own mother was waiting in line early in the pandemic, and some guy turned to her and said, back the F up, to her. And that became a line in the film, because
Yeah.
originally he said back up, and then we used exactly what was said to her, because that was so jarring as a Black woman, that a total stranger in this moment of
Yeah.
trauma and grief would treat her that way.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you would think that something like a pandemic would kind of be a great equalizer for everybody to be on the same plane and realize, hey, we're all going through the same thing. Let's, check ourselves. But it did even more so, even after Trump was elected, to me, I felt like it created even worse of a division for some people, because were saying things like that to each other in lines.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I try to, in my own life, I try to treat that kind of behavior with empathy.
Yeah.
That is coming out of place of fear and misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And that if if when they go low, we go high.
Yes, yes. And I just saw a video of Emmanuel Acho, and he said something so beautiful that we know, and this is a common phrase, that hurt people, but that
Exactly.
we have to start now healing people so that they don't
Yeah.
continue to hurt people. And
Yes.
that's what this reminds me of. And I think that that's what is so beautiful. It's like, you know, if somebody is giving you a hard time or they're being rude, you have to understand that there's something else going on there.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
does take you to be a bigger person to respond in kindness and empathy.
100%.
It
And my
sucks
mom,
because you want to cuss somebody
Yeah.
out sometimes if
Yeah.
they're rude to you.
yes, yeah. Give them a piece of it. But like, whenever something happens, and personally in my own life, and I speak negatively about something, I don't feel better for it. I feel better if I try to be positive and
Yeah.
and thoughtful. And so, that was really what the work was about, and it's how I like to conduct myself, and it's very much how Todd is as a person. And I'm glad to be a part of that message. And my mom, again, my mom had said, I think I was telling her about some experience a little while ago, and she's like, don't forget, it's always the dogs who bite and bark the most are the ones who've been kicked and had the hardest time. And
Yeah.
and so I always think about that with people when
Yeah.
when you get a little bite, you're like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah, for sure. But and just kind of, following up with that, you say that that's a part of your life and you're really trying to make that a pillar for yourself. How have you found kindness show up in your life over the last few years? Unexpectedly, or I guess unexpectedly would be the way I want to know, because I definitely have been surprised by some people's kindness because of the situation that we've all been in together in the last 2 years. I'm never really surprised when some people, go on the attack or the defense, but when
Yeah.
people are overly kind and really go out of their way, I'm like, wow, I forgot that exists sometimes. So how has that kind of showed its way in your life?
Well, I live on a really cute little neighborhood in a sweet street where, when George Floyd happened, I was walking my dog. I feel like walking my dog during the pandemic has been this whole other experience of getting to know the people of my neighborhood in a
Yeah, I
different
bet.
way. And it's also changed the character of the neighborhood. And there was a young artist a block away who is really talented, and she spent days doing a chalk portrait of George Floyd on that
Mhm.
driveway of her parents' house, and she's probably 18 or 19 years old, and it lasted half a year on the driveway. And then I met an artist who lived across the street who was a Black artist. And then you see the signs in people's yards, and people were painting rocks down my block with things that said love and family and gratitude, and making neighborhood libraries on the end of their driveway with little, old little mailboxes so people can share books. And so I feel like these kinds of things in the places that we live are really important. I actually live on a street where people bring cookies, and I bring cookies to my neighbors.
I love
And
that.
I know
I
it's
love
really
that.
it's really adorable, and it shows up in how you are, and I feel that. And so I don't know. I just try to, every time I walk out the door, I try to really be present with the people in my community. And when I'm in busier, more urban areas than where I live, I try to bring that same recognition,
Yeah.
because I think it's a way that people survive sometimes in bigger cities, by
Yes.
just being laser focused and not seeing the world around them. But I think we need to see the world around us and engage with the people around us and talk and celebrate and ask questions and make space for opening doors for people who aren't seen.
Absolutely. And I love that you are using art to do that. It's great. Truly, it is. And I mean, we could talk for hours about how music can change lives, how film can change lives, how visual art can change lives. And this film obviously combines all three. I mean, even the music that was chosen for the trailer, I was like, oh my God, my heart. It was just a perfect combination. But in this project and others that you may have been involved in, do you feel like the message is going to be received in the way that you hope?
Yes, I think so. Oh, and just about the music, that was an original composition by our composer, Mark
Oh,
Pearson.
it's gorgeous.
That you reacted to. Yeah,
Gorgeous.
he's
Yeah.
super talented composer. But yeah, I have had when we post pictures of people online, because we have all these black and white photos of the people that we first met in this first stage of the project, and when I shared the trailer, we've gotten a really tremendous response, and I'm so excited for the film to be in the world.
Yeah.
And then also, I always imagined this as a project, the Tiny Kindness project that becomes bigger than this little movie. And I'm thrilled to be able to share that when we're in New York for Tribeca, we're going to be painting another mural. And
Amazing.
and not only is it just is going to be a mural in connection with the project, it's at a historic site in New York City. It's the site of the building that we found is one of the first houses of New York, which means it's a New York City Housing Authority, a first assisted, subsidized living, and it became a model for housing projects in the United States. It was built in the 30s. And so to be able to, and it's a landmark building in New York City. So to be able to have Bourn Rich paint a mural for the Tiny Kindness project in advance of Tribeca on that building in the Village is like really powerful. And the New York City Housing Authority doesn't normally give permission for this, but there's a wall that often gets tagged. And when I talked to them about it, they loved the idea of a Black Jewish artist doing a project that celebrates kindness and connection and community on that wall. And that becomes another part of the story. And then interacting with people in New York City. And after the weight of what New York has gone through specifically in the last 2 years really is very meaningful.
It's definitely going to have a social impact, but I'm curious what that phrase means for you personally.
Social impact?
Yeah.
I always thought of it as a social justice project, and I think of social justice work, when I was studying theater in college, and I've always been really political and a feminist and an advocate. And the way that I know how to do things in the world to make change is through art. I march and make signs and post and phone bank and drove to Nevada during the before the election to campaign. But the thing that I feel like I can do that carries the most weight as an artist is to make work about things that I care about.
Yeah.
And so this project, the messaging, and it's art, so you read it as you will, but the undercurrent of the messaging are all of those themes that we've been talking about division, about racism, about this rise in racist attacks, anti-Semitic attacks, violence on our streets, unprovoked incidents, and all of those threads are in the film. I mean, there's a moment in the film where there's a young man who's queer who walks up on the street and he's wearing a pride mask and asks for a message, and that was just a person on the street on Melrose who that was his own mask, and he asked if he could be in the film and be part of it. And I think he had just moved to Los Angeles from the middle of nowhere as a young gay person. And so those kinds of voices, it's my brand and my belief, and I'm really honored that it's there, and that we attracted that, and then it became something in the film. But also there's a Native American man who's in the mural, and he's in the film, and his face is in the mural in LA, and he also was somebody we just met on the street, and he had a copy of the U.S. Constitution in his pocket when we took his photo. And he said he always carries it around with him. And I can't remember his name at this particular moment, but there was just this sort of special radiant energy, and he chose a message that said love for his mask.
Wow. Not everybody, obviously, when they're in the arts, chooses to take the path of creating art that will create a social impact. And I get it's not for everybody, but do you think that at some point, artists, whether you're an actor, a singer, director, producer, whatever, sort of has a responsibility to use their platform to speak out or make a difference at some point? Or do you think it's just not for everybody?
I think it's absolutely, with attention, with comes responsibility in leadership. And when I look at cultural leaders in music and art, recognizable people, I mean, there's a reason that Amanda Gorman catapulted to celebrity status. It's because the woman she's a young Black woman, and she has tremendous integrity and authenticity in her
Yeah.
voice,
Yeah.
and speaks that truth, and people want to see that, and they respond to it. And I think for the pop singers and actors of the world, the people that I see putting their time and money and attention where their ideas are, that's very impactful to me when I look at them. I mean, they are people that are looked up to.
Yes.
And they may be criticized for having those beliefs because they're in the public eye, but I think that that's part and parcel of the responsibility of that experience. That when you walk out into the world and you conduct yourself and you have an interview, you talk about things that matter. I recently worked on a play in LA with Bryan Cranston and Amy Brenneman, and Amy is this amazing advocate. She's, you know, we became friends during the process, but I see her as an actor on the world, and then I see her out there marching and speaking at the women's march that they just had in LA, and I think that is the way that it should be, and I wish that more people in the public eye would do that, and I admire the ones who do that.
Absolutely. For you personally, though, how did you, and maybe you just always were like this, because I kind of was always like this too, but did you ever have to get past the worry of how people may react to the fact that you are vocal about social issues in terms of getting work, in terms of getting into those rooms as a director and an actress?
Pardon. And beat.
And pause.
I think that the field has changed, and the people that I want to work with are people who care and say the thing that's supposed to be said, and do the thing, and spend their money and use their space to do it.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I want to work with. And I understand the idea of separating business and politics, but as artists, I don't really see how one can be separated from the other, because you are seen in the world as an artist because of the variety of what you represent as a person. And that is what people gravitate towards as filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Can you imagine Barry Jenkins and imagine politics not being part of the conversation? It's
right.
It's like essential in the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, it's very much who I am, and I wish there was more of it. And I think that we have to, you know, people in the spotlight have power, and you should use that power.
Yeah, for good.
For change.
We got to emphasize that, because they can use their power, but it may not be. Yeah, use it for good.
For opportunity.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So when people go to see your film, what is the one thing you want them to take away?
I hope that they walk out into the world in their day, and they interact with people with kindness and love. I mean, that is real basic. It's a real simple message.
Yeah. But it's one that needs to be pushed even more so.
It is one that needs to be pushed. I mean, the brand is kindness and love, and asking a stranger how their day is, walking up to somebody on the street and giving them a flower or a hello or a smile can make all the difference.
Yeah.
And how we see one another. And I'm scared in this moment in what's happening in this nation. And yeah, I mean, it worries me, but I think ultimately people are good, and that regardless of where you come from or what your experience is or what your racial or ethnic identity or orientation is, like, everybody wants their loved ones to be safe.
Yeah.
Everybody wants their children to be safe. Everybody wants to have the choices in their life to do whatever they want to do. And that is really important. And we have to, you know, it's like that poem that's kind of like, you know, first they came for these people, and I didn't say something, and then they came for these people, and then they came for me. And I think that's true. You know, change comes from people taking the steps on a grassroots level and on a bigger level in their own lives, and having the authenticity and the integrity to do the right thing.
Yeah. And I think people really need to get away from the fear of what may happen if you do speak up, and think about the good that can happen when you do speak up, because I think that the reward is greater than what the backlash might be.
Totally. I mean, does anything bad come from being nice?
Right. Right. That's like the best way to put it. Nothing bad can come from you being kind to others and loving people. Yeah.
Kill them with kindness.
Literally, yes. Kill them with kindness. Now, you did mention that there's going to be a mural in New York. I do have listeners in New York. I would love for you to be able to tell them where they can go and see this interactive mural project.
Yes. Hooray. The mural is going to be painted on the streets of New York, which this may even air before this. It's going to be painted between June 5th and June 9th. So if you're in New York City, come on by. And the address is 41 Avenue A, first house at 41 Avenue A. And it's very close to where we're screening also in the Village. The film Bourn Kind, our first screening is on June 11th. So I hope people can come out or see it, or June 17th. And it's also available in the Tribeca Online Festival. And we'll be there all week. We're going to celebrate. I think maybe even one of the rappers whose music we use in the feature film is going to come out and rap on the street in New York. And I hope that it's just a big celebration of love. And I would love it if people came out and wanted to talk to us. We'll be there in the daylight hours, and he'll be painting, and we'll be filming and chatting with people as they go about their business.
I love it. Well, Rachel, I think this project is incredible, and I really hope that it gets the recognition that it deserves. I'm so grateful that you took some time to chat with me today. Can you let also people know where you can follow you on social media?
Oh, thanks. No, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Malynda.
Of course.
My Instagram is Rachel Directs. The artist Bourn Rich is at Bourn Rich, and our project is the Tiny Kindness Project. We also have a website. We're going to be premiering. Our U.S. premiere is at Tribeca, and then the first other festival on the East Coast that we're going to be at is at the American Black Film Festival, also in June. So you'll be seeing the film a lot in the festival circuit, and now because of the pandemic, there's lots of opportunities to watch online, and so I'm just really, really thrilled that people will see it and share it. And if people want to take a picture of themselves with a message on their mask and tag us, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We just want more kindness and possibility for people in the world, and all good things.
There can never be too much of that. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.
And to the listeners, we are winding down to our final episodes of We Need to Talk. Thank you so much for your support. Make sure you like, rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Stephen James, our theme song writer and producer, and we'll see you next week.
We need to talk.